When Mafia boss Adrien Voss's phone rang 12 times that rainy night, he silenced every call to focus on his mistress, unaware that each rejected ring was his pregnant wife's dying plea for help. By the time he finally answered, Elena had already lost everything: their unborn child, her faith in their marriage, and the love that once made her believe a monster could change. This is the story of a man who controlled an empire but couldn't save the one person who mattered. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches across the world. Man. The rain hammered against the shattered windshield like 1,000 accusations, each drop mixing with the blood that spread slowly across Elena Hart's white cashmere sweater. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone again, fingers slick with crimson, struggling to grip the device that had become her only lifeline. The airbag hung deflated before her like a collapsed lung, and somewhere in the crumpled dashboard, the hazard lights blinked in rhythm with her racing heart. She pressed Adrien's name. The call connected. 1 ring, 2 rings. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Please, Adrien." 3 rings. 4. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth. She couldn't tell if it came from the gash on her forehead or from somewhere deeper, somewhere she was too terrified to acknowledge. Pain radiated from her abdomen in waves that made her vision blur, but she forced herself to focus on the phone screen, on her husband's name glowing in the darkness. 5 rings. 6. Then silence. Call rejected. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the screen in disbelief, watching the call log update. Missed call number 12. Her fingers moved automatically, pressing his name again, because what else could she do? She was pinned behind the wheel of her Mercedes, somewhere on Riverside Drive where the streetlights had gone dark. And the only person she had in this city, in this world, was the man who kept sending her to voicemail. The phone rang once before cutting to his voicemail greeting. His voice, smooth and controlled, the voice that had once promised to protect her from everything. "You've reached Adrien Voss. Leave a message." "Adrien, please." Her words came out broken, desperate. "There's been an accident. I'm hurt. The baby—" She stopped, pressing her free hand against her stomach, feeling the warmth of blood seeping through her sweater. "Please call me back. Please, I need you." She ended the message and immediately called again. Across the city, in the penthouse suite of the Meridian Hotel, Adrien Voss silenced his phone without looking at the screen and returned his attention to the woman in his arms. 6 hours earlier, Elena had stood in the marble bathroom of the Voss mansion, staring at 3 positive pregnancy tests lined up on the counter like evidence in a trial. Her hands shook as she picked up the first one, then the second, then the third, as if checking them again might change the result or make it feel more real. 7 weeks pregnant. She pressed her palm flat against her still flat stomach, trying to imagine the life growing inside her. A baby. Their baby. After 3 years of marriage that had slowly frozen into polite distance, after countless nights sleeping in separate wings of their sprawling estate, after watching her husband drift further and further into his dark empire of violence and secrets, maybe this would be the thing that brought him back to her. "Mrs. Voss?" The voice of Marta, their housekeeper, drifted through the bathroom door. "Mr. Voss called. He said he won't be home for dinner again." Elena closed her eyes, fighting back the familiar sting of disappointment. "Did he say where he'd be?" A pause. "No, ma'am. Just that it was business." Business. It was always business. The family business, the organization, the empire. Adrien's world had 1,000 names, all of them more important than she was. But this would change things. It had to. Elena gathered the pregnancy tests and placed them carefully in her purse. She would go to him, tell him in person, watch his face when she shared the news. Maybe she'd see a glimmer of the man she'd married 4 years ago, the one who'd swept into her quiet life like a storm and promised her everything. Before the late nights turned into absent nights, before the smell of unfamiliar perfume started clinging to his suits, before she'd learned to sleep alone in a bed meant for 2. She pulled out her phone and called Adrien's number. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. "Adrien, it's me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to see you tonight. It's important. Please call me back when you get this." She hung up and stared at herself in the mirror. At 31, Elena still looked young, though the past year had added shadows beneath her green eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Her auburn hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and she was wearing one of the designer dresses Adrien's money had bought her, a beautiful cage made of silk and promises. When had she become this person? When had the girl who'd dreamed of becoming a teacher, who'd believed in love and happy endings, turned into a trophy wife who measured her worth in the return of her husband's phone calls? The baby, she reminded herself. Everything would change with the baby. Elena found Adrien's lieutenant, Marcus Chen, in the West Wing office reviewing shipping manifests. Marcus was a compact man in his 40s with sharp eyes and a sharper mind, one of the few people in Adrien's organization she actually trusted. Marcus, I need to know where Adrien is. He looked up from his laptop, his expression carefully neutral. Mrs. Voss, you know I can't. Please. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. It's not about the business. It's personal. It's important. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Sympathy, maybe, or pity. Both made her stomach turn. He's at the Meridian, penthouse suite. But Mrs. Voss, I really don't think... Thank you, Marcus. She turned before he could finish, before he could say whatever warning was forming on his lips. She didn't want to hear it, didn't want to acknowledge what everyone in the organization seemed to know, what she'd been pretending not to notice for months. The drive to the Meridian should have taken 20 minutes. Elena made it in 15, her hands gripping the steering wheel as rain began to pepper the windshield. November in the city was always gray, always cold, but tonight felt particularly bitter. She parked in the underground garage and took the private elevator to the penthouse level, an elevator Adrien had given her the code to back when he'd still wanted her to find him. The hallway was silent, carpeted in plush burgundy that absorbed the sound of her footsteps. She stood outside the suite door, her hand raised to knock, when she heard it. Laughter. A woman's laughter, light and musical, followed by Adrien's low rumble of amusement. Elena's hand froze in midair. You're terrible, the woman said, her voice playful, intimate. Absolutely terrible. You love it. Adrien's voice warm in a way it hadn't been with Elena in months. Her hand dropped to her side. She should walk away. She should leave and pretend she'd never come here, never heard this. But her feet remained rooted to the carpet as if the truth had nailed them in place. I should go, the woman said. You said you had a call at 8. I'll cancel it. What about your wife? The question hung in the air. Elena held her breath, waiting. She's not important right now. Adrien's voice was casual, dismissive. You are. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, her shoulder hitting the wall. Not important. After 3 years of marriage, after building her entire life around him, after carrying his child, she wasn't important. Her vision blurred with tears, but she blinked them back. No, she wouldn't cry in this hallway. Wouldn't give him the satisfaction, even if he never knew she'd been here. She turned and walked back to the elevator, each step measured and precise, her heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. In the elevator, she caught sight of her reflection in the polished doors, pale, shaking, her hand still clutched protectively over her stomach. The baby. Their baby. And he was in there with another woman, saying Elena wasn't important. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Mrs. Voss, please call me. She ignored it and stepped out into the garage. The rain had intensified, drumming against the concrete ceiling in a deafening rhythm. She sat in her car, hands on the steering wheel, trying to steady her breathing. What was she supposed to do now? Go home and wait for him like she always did? Pretend she didn't know? Raise their child in a house built on lies and infidelity? Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. Where are you? Please respond. Elena started the engine. She needed to think, needed air, needed anything but the suffocating weight of this garage, this hotel, this marriage. She pulled out onto the street, windshield wipers fighting against the downpour, and turned toward Riverside Drive. The route home wound along the river, past the docks where Adrien's legitimate shipping business operated, past the warehouses where she suspected far less legitimate activities took place. She'd learned not to ask questions about that part of his life. Adrien liked his world separate, the violent empire he ruled and the pristine home where his wife waited. Well, she was done waiting. Her phone rang. Adrien's name lit up the screen. For a moment she considered answering. considered screaming at him, demanding explanations, making him acknowledge what he'd done. But what would be the point? He'd lie, smooth and practiced, and she'd want so desperately to believe him that she might let herself be fooled again. She rejected the call and immediately dialed her sister in Boston. "Elena, what's wrong?" Sarah's voice cut through the rain noise, sharp with concern. "I need to leave him." The words came out steady, final. "I need to leave Adrien." "Oh, honey, what happened?" "He's with someone else, right now, at a hotel, and I'm—" Her voice cracked. "I'm pregnant, Sarah. 7 weeks. Jesus, Elena. I can't do this anymore. I can't raise a child with a man who doesn't love me." "Then come home. Come back to Boston. You can stay with me and Tom as long as you need to." The offer wrapped around her like a lifeline. Boston. Home. Away from this city, this life, this marriage that was slowly killing her. "I will," Elena said. "I'll pack tonight. I'll drive up tomorrow." "Do you need me to come get you? Tom can leave right now, but—" "No, I'm fine. I just need to—" The headlights came out of nowhere. Elena saw them too late, high beams cutting through the rain like knives. The other car was in her lane, coming straight at her. And there was no time to swerve, no time to brake, no time to do anything but throw up her hands and scream. The impact was thunder and lightning combined. Metal shrieked against metal. Glass exploded. The world spun in a kaleidoscope of rain and darkness and pain. So much pain. And then everything stopped with a sickening crunch as her Mercedes wrapped itself around a light pole. Silence, except for the rain and the hiss of her dying engine. Elena's phone had flown somewhere during the crash. She could hear Sarah's tiny voice calling her name, distant and desperate. With trembling fingers, Elena felt across the deployed airbag, the cracked dashboard, until her hand closed around the phone. "Sarah?" Her voice came out wrong, wet and bubbling. "Elena! Oh my God, what happened? Elena!" "Accident." The word took tremendous effort. "Riverside Drive. Call Adrien." "I'm calling 911 right now. Stay with me, Elena. Stay on the line." But Elena had already hung up. She needed to call Adrien. Needed him to know what had happened. Needed him to care. Needed him to choose her over whatever he was doing in that hotel room. She dialed his number with shaking fingers. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. "Come on," she whispered. "Please, Adrien. Please." 4 rings. 5. The call connected to voicemail. Brexit. Adrien Voss was a man accustomed to control. At 36, he commanded respect through a combination of strategic brilliance and carefully applied violence. His empire stretched across 3 states, moving everything from legitimate cargo to less discussable commodities. People feared him. Politicians courted him. Rival organizations either aligned with him or disappeared. But in this moment, in the penthouse suite of the Meridian Hotel, he felt something he rarely experienced: contentment. Vanessa Cole lay beside him, her dark hair spread across the pillow, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. She was everything Elena wasn't: bold, dangerous, unafraid of his world. Where Elena had always wanted him to be softer, gentler, Vanessa appreciated exactly who he was. "Your phone keeps ringing," she murmured. "I know." He silenced it again without looking. If it was business, Marcus would handle it. If it was Elena, well, whatever she wanted could wait until he got home. "Don't you worry it might be important?" "Nothing's more important than this." Vanessa smiled and kissed him, and for a little while longer, Adrien Voss allowed himself to forget about the empire, the enemies, the wife he'd stopped loving months ago. His phone buzzed with a text, then another, then a call from Marcus that he rejected without a second thought. "You should get that," Vanessa said. "Your lieutenant doesn't usually call this late unless it's serious." With a sigh, Adrien picked up his phone. 12 missed calls from Elena, 6 texts from Marcus, each more urgent than the last. "Boss, call me." "Where are you?" "Emergency. Mrs. Voss is hurt. Hospital. Now." The words didn't make sense at first. Adrien read them again, his mind struggling to shift from contentment to crisis. Mrs. Voss, Elena. Hurt. Hospital. He called Marcus, who answered before the first ring finished. "Where the hell have you been?" Marcus's usual composure had cracked. I've been trying to reach you for 20 minutes. What happened? Car accident on Riverside Drive. Bad one. They've taken her to St. Catherine's. You need to get there now. Adrien was already moving, pulling on his clothes, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the woman still in his bed. How bad? Marcus hesitated. Bad enough that you should hurry. The emergency room at St. Catherine's Hospital was controlled chaos. Nurses moving with practiced efficiency. Doctors barking orders. Machines beeping their electronic symphonies. Adrien pushed through it all with the same force he brought to every obstacle in his life, Marcus at his shoulder, until a small woman in scrubs stepped into his path. Mr. Voss? Where is she? I'm Dr. Reeves. Your wife is in surgery right now. We're doing everything we can. What happened? Severe trauma from the accident. Head injury, internal bleeding, multiple fractured ribs. She's critical but stable. Dr. Reeves paused, her expression shifting to something gentler, more careful. Mr. Voss, I need to tell you something else. Your wife was pregnant. The word hit him like a bullet. What? About 7 weeks along. I'm very sorry, but we couldn't save the pregnancy. The trauma was too severe. Adrien stared at her, his mind unable to process the information. Pregnant. Elena had been pregnant. With his child. And he hadn't known. Hadn't answered her calls, hadn't been there when she was calling you. Marcus's voice came from beside him, quiet but heavy with accusation. All night, she was trying to reach you. Adrien looked down at his phone. 12 missed calls from Elena. He pressed the voicemail icon, put the phone to his ear. Adrien, please, there's been an accident. I'm hurt. The baby. Her voice was wet with pain and fear, and underneath it all, a desperate hope that he would answer, that he would come, that he would save her. Please call me back. Please, I need you. The message ended. There were 3 more. Adrien listened to all of them, each one more desperate than the last, his wife bleeding and trapped and calling for him while he'd been too busy fucking his mistress to even check his phone. When can I see her? His voice sounded strange to his own ears. After surgery. A few hours, most likely. There's a waiting room on the 3rd floor. Adrien nodded and walked toward the elevators, Marcus following in silence. They rode up without speaking, found the waiting room, and Adrien sat in a plastic chair that was too small for his frame and stared at his hands. These hands had built an empire, had signed deals worth millions, had broken men who'd crossed him, but they hadn't answered a phone call from his dying wife. I should have told you. Marcus sat down beside him. When she asked where you were, I should have told her not to go there. You knew? About Vanessa? Everyone knows, boss. No one wanted to be the one to tell you it was a mistake. And now my wife is in surgery because I was too busy with that mistake to answer her calls. Marcus said nothing, which was answer enough. Adrien's phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Is everything okay? He deleted it without responding and turned off his phone entirely. The hours crawled by. Marcus brought coffee that Adrien didn't drink. Nurses passed through with updates that meant nothing. Still in surgery, still critical, still fighting. Adrien watched the clock tick toward midnight, then past it, into the early hours of a new day that Elena might not see. At 2:47 a.m., Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway. Adrien was on his feet before she could speak. How is she? The surgery went well. We've stabilized her, stopped the internal bleeding, addressed the head injury. She's being moved to ICU now. When can I see her? Soon. But Mr. Voss, you need to understand she's been through severe trauma, physically and emotionally. When she wakes up, she's going to need support, not stress. I'm her husband. Yes. Dr. Reeves met his eyes steadily. And she was calling you for help all night. While she was dying, the words hung between them like an indictment. Can I see her or not? Follow me. The ICU was quieter than the emergency room, filled with the soft beeps of monitors and the whisper of ventilators. Dr. Reeves led him to a room at the end of the hall and pushed open the door. Elena lay motionless in the hospital bed, her face pale against the white pillow, a bandage wrapped around her head. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that measured her heartbeat, her breathing, her grip on life. Her auburn hair had been matted with blood, now cleaned but still dull. Her hands rested on top of the blanket, small and fragile. Adrien approached slowly, as if she might break if he moved too quickly. He'd seen violence, had caused it, had become numb to blood and pain. But this was different. This was Elena, and the damage had been done by his neglect as surely as if he'd caused the accident himself. He pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down, taking her hand carefully in his. Her skin was cool, her fingers limp. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Elena." She didn't respond, didn't move, just kept breathing in rhythm with the machines. Adrien sat there through the rest of the night, holding his wife's hand, listening to her breathe, and for the first time in his life, feeling completely powerless. Elena woke to white light and the smell of antiseptic. For a moment, she didn't remember, didn't understand why her body felt like it had been torn apart and stitched back together. Then it came rushing back. The rain, the headlights, the impact, the pain, the baby. Her hand moved to her stomach, flat and empty, and she knew. Even before the memories fully formed, she knew. "Elena," Adrien's voice. She turned her head slowly, fighting the wave of dizziness, and found him sitting beside her bed. He looked terrible, unshaved, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion or tears or both. "The baby," she whispered. His face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She closed her eyes, letting the grief wash over her. 7 weeks. Just long enough to hope. Just long enough to imagine a future that would never exist now. "You didn't answer." Her voice came out flat, emotionless. "I called you 12 times. I know. I was—" He stopped. "There's no excuse. You needed me, and I wasn't there." "Where were you?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation, Elena found her answer. "With her," she said. Not a question, a statement. "Elena, don't." She opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. "I went to the Meridian. I heard you. You told her I wasn't important." Adrien's expression shifted from guilt to something else. Shame, maybe, or the closest he could come to it. "You were at the hotel?" "I was going to tell you about the baby. I thought—" She laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "I thought it would fix us. Make you love me again. Make you choose me." "I do love you. You love the idea of me. The trophy wife. The respectable face for your empire. But you never loved me, Adrien. Not really. If you had, you would have answered the phone." She watched him struggle for words. This man who always knew what to say, who commanded rooms with his presence. He had nothing now. No defense. No justification. "I lost our baby," Elena continued, her voice gaining strength even as tears slid down her cheeks. "While you were with your mistress. I was bleeding and dying and calling for you, and you couldn't be bothered to even check who was calling. Elena, please, get out." "What?" "Get out of my room. Get out of my life. I'm done, Adrien. I want a divorce." The word seemed to shock him more than anything else she'd said. "You don't mean that." "I've never meant anything more in my life." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "You're upset. You're grieving. You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying. I want a divorce. I want you gone." "I won't give you one." His voice hardened, shifting back to the tone he used when giving orders. "You're my wife. That doesn't change because you're angry." "It changes because I don't love you anymore." She met his eyes, unflinching. "Whatever I felt for you died in that car last night, along with our baby." For a moment, she thought he might argue, might try to use his power or influence to force her compliance the way he forced everything else in his life. But something in her expression must have convinced him she was beyond threats. "We'll talk about this when you're better," he said finally. "We won't. I have nothing left to say to you." He stood there a moment longer, this powerful man rendered powerless by a woman in a hospital bed. Then he turned and walked out, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Elena lay back against the pillows, her hand still pressed to her empty stomach, and let herself cry. For the baby she'd lost, for the marriage that had been dead long before last night, for the girl she'd been 4 years ago who'd believed in fairy tales. That girl was gone now, died in a car crash on a rainy November night. But Elena Hart, the woman who remained, was done being ignored, done being unimportant, done being the wife of a man who couldn't be bothered to answer her calls. She was done, and for the first time in 3 years, that felt like freedom. The days blurred together in a haze of white walls and antiseptic smell. Elena floated between waking and sleeping, between pain medication and the sharper pain of grief that no drug could touch. Nurses came and went with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, administering medications, asking questions she answered in monosyllables. Dr. Reeves visited twice daily, monitoring her recovery with careful eyes that saw more than just physical wounds. "Your body is healing well," the doctor said on the third morning, reviewing Elena's chart. "The swelling in your brain has decreased significantly. We'll be moving you to a regular room this afternoon. When can I leave?" "Another week, possibly 2. We want to make sure there are no complications from the head injury." Dr. Reeves paused, lowering the chart. "Mrs. Voss, have you considered speaking with our grief counselor? Losing a pregnancy is traumatic, especially under these circumstances." Elena stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the small perforations in the acoustic panels. 64 in the one directly above her bed. "I don't need a counselor. Sometimes it helps to talk to someone neutral, someone who isn't involved in your life." "My life?" Elena's laugh was brittle. "You mean my marriage?" "I mean whatever you need to talk about." "Doctor." Reeves set down the chart and sat in the chair Adrien had occupied for hours that first night, before Elena had banished him. "You've been through multiple traumas, the accident, the pregnancy loss. And I suspect there are other wounds that predate both." "He's been here, hasn't he? Telling you things?" "Mr. Voss has called several times asking about your condition. I've told him what HIPAA allows me to tell him, which is very little without your consent." The doctor's expression softened. "But I don't need him to tell me that you're carrying more than physical injuries." Elena closed her eyes. The problem with trauma, she was learning, was that it stripped away the comfortable lies people told themselves. She couldn't pretend anymore that her marriage had been slowly dying. It had been dead for months, perhaps longer, and she'd been performing CPR on a corpse. "I'll think about this counselor," she said, because it was easier than explaining that talking wouldn't change anything. Wouldn't bring back the baby. Wouldn't erase the sound of Adrien's voice saying she wasn't important. After Dr. Reeves left, Elena reached for her phone. She'd been avoiding it, dreading the messages and calls that would inevitably be there. But isolation had its limits, and she needed to know what was happening in the world beyond this hospital room. 43 missed calls, most from Adrien, several from Marcus, a handful from Sarah, her sister, whose worried voicemails Elena had already returned, and one from a number she didn't recognize. She ignored Adrien's calls and opened her text messages instead. Marcus had sent a message 2 days ago. "Mrs. Voss, I'm deeply sorry for everything. If you need anything, please let me know." Sarah's messages were a mixture of love and fury. "I'm driving down. Don't try to stop me." Followed by, "Tom says I should give you space, but screw that. You're my sister." And finally, "I'm at the Marriott downtown. Call me when you're ready. I love you." Elena smiled despite everything. Sarah had always been her anchor, the one constant in a life that had been turned upside down when she'd married Adrien. She typed out a quick response. "I'm okay. Come visit tomorrow?" The reply came within seconds. "I'll be there at 9 a.m. sharp. Love you, sis." Elena set down the phone and stared at her wedding ring, a 3-carat diamond that had once represented a promise. Now it felt like a shackle. She tried to pull it off, but her fingers had swollen slightly from the IV fluids. The ring wouldn't budge. A knock at the door interrupted her struggle. She looked up, expecting a nurse, and found Marcus Chen instead. He stood in the doorway holding a bouquet of white lilies, looking more uncomfortable than she'd ever seen him. For a man who negotiated with killers and coordinated criminal enterprises, he seemed utterly lost in a hospital room. "I know you probably don't want visitors," Marcus said, "but I needed to see that you were all right." "Did Adrien send you?" "No, he doesn't know I'm here." Marcus stepped inside, setting the flowers on the table beside her bed. "I came because I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For telling you where he was that night. If I'd refused, if I'd made up a lie, you wouldn't have driven to the Meridian. You wouldn't have been on Riverside Drive. This wouldn't have happened." Elena studied him carefully. Marcus had been with Adrien for over a decade, had risen through the ranks through loyalty and competence. She'd always sensed he disapproved of Adrien's affair, though he'd never said so directly. Now guilt was written across his features in lines she'd never noticed before. "This wasn't your fault," she said. "I would have found out eventually. Better to know the truth than live in denial. The truth destroyed your life." "My life was already destroyed. I just didn't want to see it." She gestured to the chair. "Sit down, Marcus. You're making me nervous hovering like that." He sat, his movements careful, controlled. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a car." The joke fell flat. "The doctors say I'll recover. Physically, anyway. And the baby?" "Gone." The word came out sharp, final, along with any illusions I had about my marriage. Marcus nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. For all of it." They sat in silence for a moment, the beep of monitors filling the space between them. Finally, Elena asked the question that had been gnawing at her since she'd woken up. "How long has he been seeing her?" Marcus hesitated. "Mrs. Voss, please. I need to know. How long?" He let out a long breath. 6 months, maybe 7. 7 months. Half a year of lies, of late nights explained away as business, of perfume she'd pretended not to smell. 7 months while she'd been sleeping alone, eating dinner alone, building a life alone while legally bound to a man who was building his life with someone else. "Why didn't you tell me?" "It wasn't my place, and honestly I kept hoping it would end, that he'd come to his senses." Marcus leaned forward, his expression earnest. "You're a good woman, Mrs. Voss. Better than any of us deserve. Adrien was lucky to have you, and he was too stupid to realize it." "Was?" Elena caught the past tense. "You think it's really over?" "I think you told him you wanted a divorce, and I think you meant it. That makes it over, regardless of what he wants." "He'll fight it. You know he will." "Probably. Adrien doesn't like losing." Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "Which is why I brought you this." Elena took the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside was a business card for a law firm she didn't recognize. "What is this?" "Rebecca Lawson, best divorce attorney in the state. Discreet, ruthless, expensive. She's represented several people against the organization over the years. She knows how men like Adrien operate, and she knows how to beat them." "I can't afford someone like this." "The retainer's already paid. $10,000 into her trust account as of this morning. It's not from Adrien's money," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "It's mine. Consider it a wedding gift I should have given you 3 years ago, an escape route." Elena stared at the card, her vision blurring with tears. "Marcus, I can't accept this." "You can and you will. You're going to need serious legal protection, Mrs. Voss. Adrien won't make this easy, and you'll need someone in your corner who isn't afraid of him." He stood, straightening his jacket. "Call Rebecca. Tell her I sent you. She's expecting to hear from you." "Why are you doing this?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression distant. "I had a sister once. She married a man like Adrien, a man who thought his power made him untouchable, who treated her like property instead of a person. She tried to leave him 3 times. The 4th time, she didn't survive the attempt." Elena's breath caught. "Marcus, you remind me of her. Same quiet strength, same hope that love could change a violent man." He met her eyes. "But you're smarter than she was. You're getting out before it's too late. I'm going to make sure you have every advantage I can give you." He walked to the door, then paused. "One more thing. The accident wasn't an accident." The words hit Elena like ice water. "What?" "The other driver. We found the car abandoned 3 blocks from the crash site. Stolen plates, wiped clean. Professional job." "Someone tried to kill me?" "Someone tried to send Adrien a message. You were just the convenient target." Marcus's expression hardened. There's a power struggle happening in the organization. Some people think Adrien's getting soft, distracted. They wanted to remind him what's at stake. Elena pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart race beneath her palm. "You're saying I was hit deliberately? That someone in Adrien's organization tried to murder me?" "I'm saying the timing was too perfect to be coincidence. And I'm saying you need to be very careful, because if they tried once and failed, they might try again." "Does Adrien know?" He suspects. He's been quietly investigating, but he can't move too openly without showing weakness. That's the problem with empires built on fear. Any crack in the foundation can bring the whole thing down. Marcus opened the door. Stay safe, Mrs. Voss, and call Rebecca Lawson. He left before she could respond, the door clicking shut behind him. Elena sat frozen in her hospital bed, her mind racing. Someone had tried to kill her. Not random violence, not a drunk driver or a mechanical failure, but a deliberate attack designed to hurt Adrien through her. She'd known intellectually that Adrien's world was dangerous, but she'd always existed on the periphery of it, protected by her ignorance and his desire to keep his world separate. But now those worlds had collided, and she'd nearly died in the impact. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Rebecca Lawson. Marcus Chen contacted me regarding your case. I'm available to meet whenever you're ready. Take care of yourself. Elena stared at the message, then at the business card still clutched in her hand. The smart thing would be to wait, to heal physically before diving into the emotional battlefield of divorce proceedings. But Marcus's words echoed in her mind. They might try again. She needed protection, and not the kind Adrien could provide. She needed legal protection, financial independence, a way out that didn't require his permission or his mercy. She typed back, "Can you come to street? Catherine's hospital? I'm not being released for another week." The response came immediately. "I'll be there tomorrow at 2 p.m. Elena set down the phone and looked at her wedding ring again. This time, she worked it slowly over her swollen knuckle, twisting and pulling until finally it slid free. The skin beneath was pale, marked by a band of white where the sun had never touched. She dropped the ring into the drawer of her bedside table and closed it with a decisive click. The next morning brought Sarah exactly at 9 as promised. Her sister burst through the door like a tornado of righteous fury, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her eyes blazing. "Let me see him," Sarah demanded before Elena could even say hello. "Let me see the bastard who did this to you so I can kill him myself." "Sarah, don't Sarah me. You almost died, Elena. You lost your baby. And where was your devoted husband, screwing his mistress and ignoring your calls?" She paced the small room like a caged lion. "I told you not to marry him. I told you he was dangerous, but did you listen? No, you were too in love with the idea of being swept off your feet by a powerful man." "You're right." Sarah stopped mid-pace. "What?" "You're right, about all of it. I should have listened to you." Elena patted the bed beside her. "Now stop yelling and come here. I need my big sister, not my prosecutor." Sarah's anger melted into concern. She sat on the edge of the bed and pulled Elena into a careful hug, mindful of the bruises and bandages. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry this happened to you." They held each other while Elena cried, the kind of crying she'd been holding back for days, deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere beyond the physical pain. Sarah stroked her hair and made soothing sounds, the same way she had when they were children, and Elena had nightmares. "I wanted the baby so badly," Elena whispered when she could speak again. "I thought it would fix everything. Make him love me again." "Oh, honey, a baby can't fix a broken marriage. It just gives you one more thing to lose." "I know that now." Elena pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I'm leaving him. I'm filing for divorce." Sarah's expression shifted from sympathy to fierce approval. "Good. It's about damn time." "I'm meeting with a divorce attorney this afternoon. Marcus set it up." "Marcus? Adrien's lieutenant?" He's been helping me. I think he feels guilty about what happened." Elena explained about the retainer, the lawyer, Marcus's revelation about his sister. Sarah listened intently, her expression growing darker with each detail. "So not only is Adrien a cheating bastard, but someone in his organization tried to kill you?" "Marcus thinks they were trying to send Adrien a message." "Jesus, Elena, you need to get out of this city. Come back to Boston with me. Today." "I can't leave yet. The doctors want to monitor me for at least another week, and I need to start the divorce proceedings while I have momentum. If I run now, Adrien will interpret it as weakness. He'll come after me." "Then let him come. Tom has a lawyer friend who—" "I need someone who understands Adrien's world, someone who knows how to fight dirty." Elena squeezed her sister's hand. "I appreciate the offer, I really do. But I have to do this right. I get one chance to break free, and I can't mess it up. Sarah studied her for a long moment. You've changed, even in the past few days. You're different. I died in that car, Sarah, or at least the version of me that was willing to accept scraps of affection and call it love. The woman who survived isn't going to make the same mistakes. I'm proud of you. Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. Terrified but proud. They spent the rest of the morning talking, carefully avoiding topics that were too heavy. Sarah told stories about her kids, about Tom's latest attempt at home improvement that had nearly flooded their basement, about the neighbor's dog who kept escaping and showing up in their backyard. Normal, mundane details of a normal, mundane life. The kind of life Elena had given up when she'd married into Adrien's world. At 1:30, Sarah left to grab lunch, promising to return by 3. Elena used the time to prepare herself mentally for Rebecca Lawson's arrival. She changed out of her hospital gown into the clothes Sarah had brought, real clothes that made her feel more like herself and less like a patient. She brushed her hair, careful around the bandage, applied a little makeup to cover the worst of the bruising. She was studying her reflection in the bathroom mirror when a knock sounded at the door. "Come in," Elena called, assuming it was a nurse. Instead, Vanessa Cole walked into the room. Elena recognized her immediately from social media stalking she'd done months ago, when she'd first suspected Adrien's infidelity. Vanessa was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way. Dark hair cut in a severe bob, red lipstick, a black dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "Hello, Elena." Vanessa's voice was smooth, cultured. "I hope I'm not intruding." Elena's hands clenched the edge of the sink. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to meet the woman who's been taking up so much of Adrien's emotional energy lately." Vanessa leaned against the doorframe, utterly at ease. "He's been quite distracted, guilty. It's not a good look on him." "Get out." "In a moment. First, I think we should have a conversation, woman to woman." "We have nothing to talk about." "I disagree. We have quite a lot to talk about, actually. Starting with the fact that you're trying to divorce a man who doesn't believe in letting go of his possessions." Vanessa walked further into the room, her heels clicking on the linoleum. "Adrien told me what you said, about wanting out. He thinks you're grieving, that you'll change your mind once you've had time to process everything." "He's wrong." "Is he?" "Because from where I'm standing, you look like a woman who's made her entire identity around being Mrs. Adrien Voss. Take that away and what are you? A 31-year-old with no career, no income, no power. Just another woman who bet on the wrong man." The words were designed to hurt, and they did. But Elena had learned something in the past few days about pain. It could either destroy you or forge you into something stronger. "You're right," Elena said calmly. "I am just another woman who bet on the wrong man. But at least I'm smart enough to walk away when I realize my mistake. Unlike you, who's apparently willing to settle for being the other woman." Vanessa's smile tightened. "I'm not the other woman. I'm the woman he actually wants. You're just the trophy he married before he knew better." "Then you can have him. I'm done fighting for a man who isn't worth the effort." "How noble, how dignified." Vanessa stepped closer, her expression hardening. "But let me give you some advice, Elena. Adrien Voss doesn't lose. Not territory, not power, and certainly not wives. You can file all the divorce papers you want, but he'll never let you go. Because you're his, and he doesn't give up what's his. I'm not his property. Aren't you? Look around, Elena. This room, that hospital bed, the clothes you're wearing, all paid for with Adrien's money. Money earned through violence and crime. You've been living off blood money for 3 years, enjoying the lifestyle it provided while pretending not to know where it came from. You're just as complicit in his world as I am." The accusation stung because it carried truth. Elena had known, or at least suspected, that Adrien's wealth came from illegal activities. She'd chosen to look away, to accept the comfort and security without asking uncomfortable questions. "You're right," Elena said quietly. "I turned a blind eye. I let myself be bought with houses and cars and jewelry. But I'm done with that now. I'm done with all of it. And what will you do instead? Go back to teaching elementary school? Live in a tiny apartment, budgeting for groceries? You've tasted the good life, Elena. You really think you can go back to being ordinary?" "I'd rather be ordinary and free than extraordinary and trapped." Vanessa laughed. the sound sharp and bitter. You really believe that, don't you? You think leaving Adrien will set you free, but you don't understand him the way I do. Adrien doesn't forgive disloyalty, and divorce, in his mind, is the ultimate betrayal. Then he shouldn't have betrayed me first. He didn't betray you. He just found someone better suited to his world, someone who doesn't flinch when he comes home with blood on his hands, someone who understands that power requires sacrifice. Vanessa's expression softened into something almost pitying. You were never going to be enough for him, Elena. You're too soft, too naive, too desperate for a fairy tale that doesn't exist. The door opened behind Vanessa, and a woman's voice cut through the tension like a knife. I'm going to give you exactly 5 seconds to leave this room before I call security and have you arrested for harassment. Elena looked past Vanessa to see a tall woman in her 50s standing in the doorway. She had silver hair cut short, sharp features, and the kind of presence that demanded immediate attention. This, Elena knew instinctively, was Rebecca Lawson. Vanessa turned, sizing up the newcomer. And you are? Mrs. Voss's attorney, which means you're trespassing and threatening my client. Security? Rebecca called down the hallway. We need someone in room 412 immediately. For a moment, Vanessa looked like she might argue. Then she smiled, cold and calculated, and turned back to Elena. Think about what I said. Adrien isn't going to let you go. And when he fights to win, no matter who gets hurt in the process. She walked out, brushing past Rebecca with deliberate rudeness. 2 security guards appeared seconds later, and Rebecca gave them a brief description of Vanessa with instructions not to allow her back in the building. Once they were alone, Rebecca closed the door and turned to Elena with concern. Are you all right? Elena sank down on the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly unsteady. That was Vanessa Cole, Adrien's mistress. I gathered. Charming woman. Rebecca's voice dripped sarcasm. What did she want? To warn me, I think, or threaten me, maybe both. Did she physically harm you or make explicit threats? No, she just told me Adrien won't agree to the divorce, that he doesn't let go of what's his. Rebecca sat down in the chair across from the bed, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. Mr. Voss can refuse to agree all he wants. This is a no-fault divorce state. You don't need his permission to end the marriage. She pulled a leather portfolio from her bag. But before we get into specifics, I need to ask you something important. Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed with this? Yes? No hesitation? No part of you hoping he'll change, apologize, make things right? Elena thought about the question carefully. A week ago, even 2 days ago, she might have wavered, might have clung to the hope that the man she'd married was still somewhere inside the stranger who'd ignored her calls. But Vanessa's visit had crystallized something for her. I'm certain, she said firmly. I want out. Good, because once we start this process, there's no going back. Adrien Voss is going to make this as difficult and painful as possible. He'll use every resource at his disposal to maintain control over you. We need to be prepared for that. Marcus said someone tried to kill me, that the accident wasn't an accident. Rebecca's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or grim confirmation. I've heard rumors to that effect. Do you have proof? Only what Marcus told me. The other car was stolen, wiped clean, professional job. That complicates things. If Adrien's enemies are targeting you to get to him, leaving him might actually make you more vulnerable, not less. So what do I do? We proceed carefully. File the paperwork, but keep it quiet initially. No public announcements, no social media posts. We don't want to advertise your intentions until we have proper security measures in place. Rebecca opened her portfolio. I'm going to need complete financial disclosure from you. Bank accounts, assets, anything in your name or jointly held. We also need to discuss what you want from this divorce. I just want my freedom. Freedom isn't free, Mrs. Voss, especially not from a man like Adrien. You're entitled to a significant settlement, half of all marital assets acquired during the marriage. Given your husband's wealth, we're talking about millions of dollars. The number should have excited her. Instead, it felt like a weight. I don't want his blood money. It's your money too. You were married to him. You're entitled to it. Rebecca leaned forward. I understand the moral qualms, but you need to think practically. You have no income, no career to return to after 3 years out of the workforce. You'll need resources to rebuild your life. What if I don't want anything? What if I just want to walk away? Then Adrien wins. He keeps everything while you leave with nothing, which is exactly what men like him hope for. They want you to feel too guilty or too proud to claim what's rightfully yours. Rebecca's voice gentled. I've represented dozens of women leaving powerful men. The ones who walk away with nothing always regret it. Not because of the money itself, but because they realized too late that they traded years of their life for a man who gave them nothing in return. Elena thought about the 3 years she'd spent as Adrien's wife. The dinners eaten alone, the nights sleeping in an empty bed, the slow erosion of herself as she'd tried to become whatever he wanted. Didn't she deserve something for that sacrifice? Okay, she said finally. Tell me what you need. They spent the next hour going through details. Rebecca took notes in precise handwriting, asking questions Elena had never considered. Had Adrien ever been physically violent? No. Verbally abusive? Sometimes, though Elena had always justified it as stress from work. Had she signed any prenuptial agreements? Yes, but she'd been so in love, so certain the marriage would last forever, that she'd barely read it. I'll need a copy of that prenup, Rebecca said. Depending on what's in it, we may be able to challenge its validity. Prenups signed under duress or without proper legal representation can be overturned. I had a lawyer. Adrien insisted on it. A lawyer he chose or one you chose independently? Elena hesitated. He recommended someone. Said they were the best. Rebecca made a note. We'll look into that. If there was any conflict of interest or if you weren't properly advised of your rights, we have grounds to challenge. By the time Sarah returned at 3, Rebecca had compiled a comprehensive file and outlined their strategy. She stood to leave, shaking Elena's hand with surprising warmth. You're doing the right thing, Rebecca said. It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. I'll file the initial paperwork by the end of the week. In the meantime, don't speak to Adrien about the divorce. Don't let him convince you to reconcile. And absolutely don't meet with him alone. All communication goes through me from now on. What if he shows up here? Call security. Call me. Call the police if necessary. You're under no obligation to speak to him. She paused at the door. And Mrs. Voss? That woman who came to threaten you earlier? Document everything she said. If she contacts you again, let me know immediately. Harassment from a spouse's paramour can be very useful in divorce proceedings. After Rebecca left, Sarah exploded with questions. Elena answered them as best she could, exhaustion creeping through her body. The conversation with Vanessa, followed by the intense session with Rebecca, had drained her completely. You need to rest, Sarah said, seeing Elena's pale face. I'm going to head out. Let you sleep. Don't go, not yet. Elena caught her sister's hand. I don't want to be alone right now. Sarah's expression softened. I'm not going anywhere. I'll sit right here while you sleep. And if Adrien or his psychotic mistress shows up, I'll throw them out myself. Elena smiled, grateful beyond words. She settled back against the pillows, her body finally surrendering to the exhaustion she'd been fighting. As she drifted off, she heard Sarah's voice, soft and fierce. You're going to get through this, Elena. I promise you. You're going to get through this and come out stronger on the other side. Elena wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that there was life after Adrien, freedom after years of living in his shadow. But as sleep pulled her under, Vanessa's words echoed in her mind. Adrien doesn't lose, and when he fights to win, no matter who gets hurt in the process. The nightmares started on the 4th night. Elena would wake gasping, her heart hammering against her ribs, the phantom sensation of impact still rattling through her bones. In her dreams, the headlights came at her again and again, but each time she looked up to see the driver, it was a different face. Sometimes Adrien, sometimes Vanessa, sometimes a stranger with empty eyes who smiled as the cars collided. Sarah had gone back to Boston after 3 days, promising to return the following weekend. Elena had insisted she go, had manufactured a brave face and assured her sister she was fine. But alone in the dark hospital room with only the beep of monitors for company, Elena felt anything but fine. She was reaching for her water glass when her phone lit up with an incoming call. Not Adrien this time, but Marcus. She answered immediately. Mrs. Voss, I'm sorry to call so late. It's fine. I wasn't sleeping anyway. She sat up, wincing at the pull of healing ribs. What's wrong? Marcus's hesitation told her everything. Adrien knows about Rebecca Lawson. He knows you're filing for divorce. Elena's stomach dropped. How? He has people everywhere. Someone saw Rebecca leaving the hospital, made a few calls, put it together. Marcus's voice was tight with tension. He's on his way to see you right now. I tried to talk him out of it, but he's not listening. You need to be prepared. Rebecca said I shouldn't speak to him alone. Then don't. Call security. Have them keep him out. But Mrs. Voss, you need to understand something. Adrien is not himself right now. He's angry and desperate, and that makes him unpredictable. The line went dead. Elena sat frozen for a moment, then scrambled for the call button. A nurse appeared within seconds, a young woman with kind eyes and quick hands. I need security, Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. My husband is coming here, and I don't want to see him. Please, I need someone at the door. The nurse's expression shifted to professional concern. I'll call them right now. Are you in danger? I don't know, maybe. I can't see him. Please. 2 security guards arrived within minutes, taking positions outside her door. The nurse stayed with Elena, checking vitals that had spiked with her anxiety, murmuring soothing words that barely penetrated the fear. Elena kept her eyes on the door, waiting, her hands twisted in the hospital blanket. Adrien arrived like a storm. Elena heard him before she saw him, his voice cutting through the quiet hallway, sharp with authority and barely controlled rage. One of the security guards tried to stop him, tried to explain that Mrs. Voss had requested no visitors, but Adrien's voice only grew louder. That's my wife in there. You have no right to keep me out. Sir, we have our orders. I don't care about your orders. Move aside or I'll move you myself. The nurse squeezed Elena's hand. Do you want me to call the police? Elena opened her mouth to say yes, but the words caught in her throat. Calling the police on Adrien Voss was complicated at best, dangerous at worst. Half the force was on his payroll. The other half knew better than to get involved in his personal affairs. Just keep him out, she whispered. The commotion outside escalated. Adrien's voice rose to a shout, and there was a scuffling sound, furniture scraping against linoleum. Then the door burst open and Adrien stood there, breathing hard, his shirt untucked and his hair disheveled. The security guards flanked him, looking uncertain whether to physically restrain a man who could have them fired with a phone call. Elena. He said her name like a prayer and a curse combined. We need to talk. Get out. Her voice shook but held firm. I don't want you here. I'm not leaving until we talk about this. He took a step into the room. The guards moved with him, but Adrien ignored them completely, his eyes locked on Elena. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was marrying you in the first place. The words hit him like a slap. Something flickered across his face, pain maybe, or the closest thing to it a man like Adrien could feel. He turned to the nurse and security guards. Leave us. Sir, Mrs. Voss requested I said leave us. Adrien's voice dropped to the dangerous quiet that made grown men step back. This is between me and my wife. Get out. The nurse looked at Elena, who nodded slowly. She didn't want witnesses for what was about to happen. Didn't want strangers seeing her marriage finally shatter into pieces. Once they were alone, Adrien closed the door and leaned against it. He looked terrible, not just disheveled, but hollowed out, like something had been carved from inside him. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His jaw was rough with several days of stubble. His hands trembled slightly before he shoved them into his pockets. Rebecca Lawson, he said finally. You hired Rebecca Lawson. Marcus paid for her. I couldn't afford her on my own since I have no money of my own, just yours. Blood money, as Vanessa so helpfully pointed out. Adrien's jaw tightened at the mention of Vanessa's name. She came here? Yesterday, to warn me that you'd never let me go. To tell me I was too soft, too naive, too ordinary for your world. Elena met his eyes. She was right about one thing. I am too soft for your world, too soft to accept that my husband's empire is built on violence and fear, too soft to keep pretending I don't know where the money comes from. You never asked questions before. I never wanted to know the answers before, but almost dying tends to clarify things. She gestured to the bruises still mottling her skin, the bandage around her head. This is your world, Adrien. People getting hurt, people dying, and I'm done being part of it. He moved toward her and she flinched. The involuntary movement stopped him cold, his face contorting with something that looked almost like anguish. I would never hurt you, he said quietly. You already did. You hurt me every time you chose her over me, every time you ignored my calls, every time you came home smelling like her perfume and expected me to smile and pretend not to notice. Her voice cracked. You hurt me when you let our baby die because you were too busy fucking your mistress to answer your phone. Don't. The word came out strangled. Don't say that. Why not? It's the truth. I was dying, Adrien. Our child was dying. And you were with her. He turned away, his shoulders rigid with tension. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. I can't change what happened. I can't bring back our baby, but I can be better. We can fix this. There's nothing left to fix. The marriage is over. It's over when I say it's over. He spun back to face her, and there it was. The flash of control, the assertion of power that defined every aspect of his life. You're my wife. That means something. It means I'm the woman you promised to love and honor and protect. You broke every one of those promises. So you're just going to throw away 3 years because I made mistakes? They weren't mistakes, Adrien. Mistakes are accidental. You made choices. You chose her again and again. You chose your empire over our marriage. You chose everything except me. That's not true. Then tell me. Elena leaned forward, ignoring the pain that flared through her ribs. Tell me honestly. Do you love me? The question hung between them like a challenge. Adrien opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. His silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. Elena settled back against the pillows, suddenly exhausted. You love the idea of me. The perfect wife who doesn't ask questions, who looks good at your charity events, who gives you respectability. But you don't love me. Maybe you never did. I married you. You married a trophy, and when you got bored with me sitting on your shelf, you found a new toy to play with. It's not like that with Vanessa. Then what is it like? He struggled for words, his composure cracking further. She understands my world. She doesn't flinch when things get dark. She accepts me as I am. And I don't? You want me to be something I'm not. Softer, gentler, more present. But this is who I am, Elena. This empire, this life, it's not something I can just walk away from. I never asked you to walk away from it. I just asked you to make room for me in it, to answer when I called, to come home sometimes, to act like our marriage mattered. She shook her head. I saw it, but I wasn't enough. I was never going to be enough. Adrien moved to the chair beside her bed and sank into it, his head in his hands. What do you want me to say? I want you to let me go. I can't. You can. You just won't. Because Adrien Voss doesn't lose, right? That's what Vanessa said. You don't lose territory or power or wives. This isn't about winning or losing. Then what is it about? He looked up, and for the first time since she'd known him, Elena saw genuine fear in his eyes. I don't know how to be without you. You're the only good thing in my life, the only clean thing. If I lose you, there's nothing left but the darkness. The confession should have touched her, should have softened the hard edges of her resolve, but all Elena felt was tired. I can't be your redemption, Adrien. I can't be the light that keeps your darkness at bay. That's too much weight for one person to carry. You have to find that within yourself. And if I can't, then you'll drown. But you'll drown without dragging me down with you. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I won't sign the papers. I won't make this easy for you. I don't need your signature. Rebecca explained the laws. I can divorce you whether you agree or not. And I can make the process so expensive, so drawn out, so publicly humiliating that you'll wish you'd never started it. His voice had shifted back to the cold authority she recognized. I can freeze your accounts, tie up your assets, make it impossible for you to afford an apartment, let alone a lawyer. Then you'll prove everything I've said about you is true, that you're a controlling, manipulative man who sees his wife as property. I see you as mine. There's a difference. No, there isn't. And the fact that you can't see that proves we should never have gotten married in the first place. Adrien paced to the window, staring out at the city lights. I was with Vanessa the night of the accident because I was afraid. The admission was so unexpected that Elena didn't know how to respond. Afraid of what? She asked finally. Of you. Of us. Of the way you looked at me like I was worth saving. He turned back to face her. You were too good, Elena. Too pure. And I knew that eventually you'd see me for what I really am, and you'd leave. So I pushed you away first. I found someone who already knew what I was, who didn't expect me to be better. That's the most cowardly thing I've ever heard. I know. He laughed, the sound bitter. But it's the truth. I sabotaged us because I was too afraid to try to be the man you deserved. And now? Now I've lost you anyway, and I have no one to blame but myself. He moved toward the door, his movements heavy with defeat. I'll sign the papers, Elena. I'll give you whatever you want. The house, the money, all of it. I don't want your guilt money. Too bad. You're getting it anyway. Consider it payment for 3 years of your life I can never give back. He paused with his hand on the door handle. The accident wasn't random. Marcus told you that, didn't he? Elena nodded. It was Viktor Kozlov, one of my competitors. He wanted to send a message, remind me that nothing I have is safe, including you. Adrien's expression hardened. Especially you. Why are you telling me this? Because even though we're ending, I still need to know you're safe. Kozlov won't stop just because we're getting divorced. If anything, it might make you more of a target, a vulnerability he can exploit. Then what do I do? You let me protect you, not as your husband, but as someone who owes you a debt I can never repay. He opened the door. I'll have Marcus assign security to you, 24-hour protection until we neutralize the threat. I don't want your men following me around. You don't get a choice in this. Kozlov plays for keeps, and I won't let him hurt you again. Not on my watch. Adrien stepped into the hallway, then looked back one last time. I'm sorry, Elena, for all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the ghost of a marriage that had died long before the accident made it official. The following days passed in a blur of medical tests and legal paperwork. Dr. Reeves finally cleared Elena for discharge on the condition that she take it easy, attend follow-up appointments, and watch for signs of complications. Rebecca Lawson sent over preliminary divorce documents for Elena's review, along with a note that Adrien's lawyers had already reached out expressing willingness to negotiate. Sarah returned as promised to help Elena move into a temporary apartment Rebecca had helped secure, a modest 2-bedroom in a building with good security, far enough from the Voss mansion that Elena could breathe but close enough to her lawyer's office for easy meetings. The apartment was nothing like the sprawling estate she'd shared with Adrien, but it felt like a palace nonetheless. It was hers, her space, her choice. Marcus arranged for 2 bodyguards, professional and discreet, who took shifts watching her building. Elena hated the reminder that she needed protection, but she hated the idea of Viktor Kozlov getting another chance at her even more. 2 weeks after leaving the hospital, Elena sat in Rebecca Lawson's downtown office, reviewing the proposed settlement. The numbers were staggering. Adrien was offering her $8 million, the Hamptons beach house, and a trust fund that would generate substantial income for the rest of her life. This is incredibly generous, Rebecca said, studying the documents. Suspiciously generous, actually. I expected him to fight harder. He said he owed me a debt. A debt of $8 million. Either he feels extraordinarily guilty, or he's trying to buy your silence about something. Elena thought about Adrien's empire, the illegal activities she'd turned a blind eye to for 3 years. Maybe both. Well, regardless of his motivations, I recommend you take it. This kind of settlement would usually require months of negotiation. The fact that he's offering it up front is remarkable. What about the prenup? Functionally worthless, as it turns out. His lawyer had a conflict of interest. He was representing both Adrien and you, which is a clear violation. We could have challenged it easily. Adrien's attorneys seem to recognize that, which is probably why they're being so accommodating. Elena signed the papers with a hand that didn't shake, her signature sealing the end of Mrs. Adrien Voss and the beginning of simply Elena Hart again. That evening, she stood on the small balcony of her new apartment, looking out at the city that had been her home for 3 years but had never truly felt like it. Her phone buzzed with the message from an unknown number. The text contained only an address and a time. Riverside Warehouse. Midnight. Come alone. Elena's first instinct was to delete it, to call Marcus or the bodyguards or Rebecca. But something made her hesitate. She called Marcus instead. Mrs. Voss? He sounded surprised to hear from her. Is everything all right? I just got a strange text, an address, and a time. Riverside Warehouse. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Don't go. Why? What is it? It's where we're meeting with Kozlov to discuss terms. Terms for what? For ending the threat against you. Adrien's been negotiating with him, trying to find a peaceful resolution, but Kozlov is unpredictable. If he's inviting you, it's not for anything good. Maybe I should be there. Maybe if he sees I'm not part of Adrien's life anymore. It doesn't matter to Kozlov whether you're married or divorced. You were used to hurt Adrien once, and that makes you a permanent target in his eyes. Please, Mrs. Voss, stay home. Let Adrien handle this. Elena ended the call, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to be there, that her future, her safety, was being decided by men in a warehouse, and she deserved to have a say in it. At 11:30, she slipped out of her apartment through the service entrance, avoiding the bodyguards stationed in the lobby. She took a cab to within 3 blocks of Riverside Warehouse, then walked the rest of the way, her heart pounding with each step. The warehouse loomed against the night sky, dark and imposing. A few cars were parked outside, expensive sedans that screamed money and power. Elena recognized Adrien's Mercedes among them. She was about to approach when a hand clamped over her mouth from behind, pulling her into the shadows. She struggled, trying to scream, but the grip was iron strong. Quiet, Mrs. Voss. The voice was unfamiliar, accented, Russian, maybe. I'm not going to hurt you, not yet. The hand released her mouth, and Elena spun to face her attacker. He was a large man with a scarred face and cold eyes, flanked by 2 others who looked equally dangerous. Viktor Kozlov wants to meet you, the man said. Consider this your invitation. They led her toward the warehouse, not roughly but with undeniable force. The door opened into a vast space filled with shipping containers and industrial equipment. In the center, under harsh fluorescent lights, stood Adrien and Marcus, facing a group of men Elena didn't recognize. Adrien saw her first. The color drained from his face. Elena, what the hell are you doing here? She received my invitation, a new voice said, smooth and cultured. A man stepped forward from the group, tall, impeccably dressed, with silver hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. Viktor Kozlov. I thought she deserved to be part of this conversation since she's the reason we're all here. She has nothing to do with this, Adrien said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. This is between you and me. But she's the leverage, isn't she? The weak point in the great Adrien Voss's armor. Kozlov circled Elena slowly, studying her like a piece of art. Such a pretty thing. No wonder you were distracted enough to let your guard down. Don't touch her. I wouldn't dream of it. Not when she's worth so much more alive. Kozlov stopped in front of Elena, tilting his head. Do you know what your husband has offered me to guarantee your safety, Mrs. Voss? 30% of his East Coast operations. Quite the price for one woman. Elena looked at Adrien, saw the truth in his eyes. He was willing to give up 1/3 of his empire to protect her, even now, even after everything. I'm not his wife anymore, she said, finding her voice. We're getting divorced. I'm not part of his world. I'm not his weakness. Kozlov laughed. Oh, my dear, you'll always be his weakness. Divorce papers don't change that. The way he looks at you right now proves it. Then you're wasting your time. Use me to hurt him, and all you'll do is make him angry. Let me go, and you lose nothing. She's right, Adrien said. Elena is off the table. You want concessions? Fine, we can negotiate. But she walks out of here untouched, or this ends very differently than either of us wants. Kozlov considered this, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled. You know what I think, Adrien? I think you're bluffing. I think you'd burn down half the city to keep her safe. So here's my counteroffer. 50% of your operations, or I put a bullet in her head right now and we skip the negotiations entirely. The warehouse went silent. Elena could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of every eye in the room on her. Adrien's hand moved toward his jacket, where she knew he kept a gun. "Don't," Kozlov warned. "My men have orders to shoot her first if you draw, so let's all stay calm and discuss this like civilized people." 50% is more than half my empire, Adrien said slowly. "You're asking me to give you control. I'm asking you to choose. Your empire or her life seems like a simple decision to me." Elena watched Adrien's face, saw the war playing out behind his eyes. This was everything he'd built, everything he'd fought for, the power and respect that defined him. And Kozlov was asking him to hand it over for a woman he was divorcing. "Take it," Elena said quietly. Adrien's eyes snapped to hers. "What?" "Give him what he wants. It's not worth my life. It's not worth anyone's life." "Elena!" "Please, Adrien, just let him win. Let it go." For a long moment, the warehouse was perfectly still. Then Adrien turned back to Kozlov. "You want 50%? Fine. You've got it. But this ends tonight. No more threats, no more attempts on her life. She's off limits permanently, or so help me. I'll burn everything we've both built to ash and make sure you die in the flames." Kozlov extended his hand. "We have a deal, Mr. Voss." They shook, sealing an agreement that shifted the balance of power in the criminal underworld. Kozlov's men released Elena, and she stumbled toward Marcus, who steadied her with a gentle hand on her elbow. "Take her home," Adrien told him. "Make sure she gets there safely." "What about you, boss? I need to finish here. Draw up the paperwork, make it official." Adrien looked at Elena one last time, his expression unreadable. "Goodbye, Elena." The finality in his voice made it clear this was more than just ending a meeting. This was goodbye to everything they'd been, everything they might have been. Marcus led Elena out of the warehouse and into the waiting car. As they pulled away, she looked back to see Adrien still standing under those harsh lights, a king who'd just given away half his kingdom. For her, for a woman who didn't want to be his anymore. The realization hit her like a wave. Adrien had meant what he said. He did love her, in his own broken way. Just not enough to be better, not enough to change, only enough to sacrifice his empire to keep her alive. It was the saddest kind of love story. The kind where love existed but wasn't sufficient. Where caring about someone didn't translate to being good for them. "He'll recover," Marcus said quietly, reading her expression. "Adrien always does. He'll rebuild what he lost." "Will he?" "Men like him always land on their feet. It's people like you and me who carry the scars." Marcus pulled up to her apartment building. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Leaving, starting over. You deserve better than the half-life he was giving you." "Thank you, Marcus. For everything." He nodded. "The bodyguards will stay until we're certain Kozlov keeps his word. After that, you'll be free. Truly free." Elena climbed out of the car and rode the elevator to her apartment, her mind replaying the scene in the warehouse over and over. She'd seen Adrien make a choice tonight, had seen him value her life over his empire. It should have felt like a victory. Should have felt like validation. Instead, it just felt sad. She changed into pajamas and climbed into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. This bed was smaller than the one she'd shared with Adrien, the mattress firmer, the sheets less expensive. But it was hers. Her bed. Her apartment. Her life. Tomorrow, Rebecca would call with news about the final divorce settlement. Next week, the papers would be signed, making the end official. Next month, she'd start looking for a teaching position, rebuilding the career she'd abandoned for marriage. Next year, maybe the nightmares would stop. Elena closed her eyes and tried to imagine that future, a life where she wasn't defined by being Adrien Voss's wife, where her worth wasn't measured by his attention or lack thereof. It was hard to picture, like trying to see through fog, but it was there, waiting. A life that belonged entirely to her. She just had to be brave enough to claim it. The divorce papers arrived by courier on a gray morning 3 weeks later. Elena signed them at her kitchen table, her hand steady, her coffee growing cold beside her. Rebecca had warned her this moment might feel anticlimactic after all the drama, the accident, the hospital confrontation, the warehouse showdown with Kozlov. And she was right. There was no thunder, no dramatic music, no sense of triumph or tragedy. Just Elena's signature next to Adrien's, ending what should never have begun. She slid the papers back into their envelope and set them by the door for the courier to collect. Then she sat in the silence of her apartment, waiting to feel something. Relief, maybe. Or grief. Or the lightness that was supposed to come with freedom. Instead, she felt hollow. Her phone rang. Sarah's number flashed across the screen. "Did you sign them?" her sister asked without preamble. "Just now." "How are you feeling?" "I don't know, empty, I think." "That's normal. You've been running on adrenaline for weeks. Now that it's done, the crash comes." Sarah's voice softened. "Come to Boston, Elena. Stay with us for a while. The kids miss their aunt, and you could use some distance from that city." "I can't. Not yet." Elena stood and walked to the window, looking down at the street below, where one of Marcus's men sat in a parked car, still watching. "There's something I need to do first. Please tell me you're not going to see Adrien." "No, I'm going to see Marcus." Elena had been putting this off for days, but it needed to happen. He's been protecting me, helping me, and I never properly thanked him. I owe him that much. "Just be careful. That whole world is dangerous, Elena. Even the people who seem like allies." After hanging up, Elena texted Marcus asking to meet. His response came within minutes. Riverside Cafe. 2 hours. The cafe was a small place tucked between warehouses, the kind of establishment that catered to dock workers and truckers. Elena felt conspicuous in her tailored coat and designer boots, remnants of her life as Mrs. Voss that she hadn't yet replaced. Marcus sat in a corner booth, a cup of coffee untouched in front of him. "Mrs. Voss?" He stood as she approached, ever formal despite everything. "Please sit." "It's just Elena now. The divorce is final as of this morning." Something flickered across his face. Approval, maybe, or satisfaction. "How does it feel?" "Strange. Like waking up from a dream and not quite remembering who you were before you fell asleep." She ordered coffee from a waitress who looked like she'd seen everything and been impressed by nothing. "I wanted to thank you, for the lawyer, for the protection, for everything. You didn't have to help me." "I did, though. I told you about my sister. I wasn't going to watch another woman get destroyed by a man like Adrien." "Is he really like that? Destructive, I mean. Or did I just bring out the worst in him?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Adrien is a complicated man. He's capable of great loyalty and terrible cruelty, sometimes in the same breath. You didn't bring out the worst in him. You brought out his fear, which might be worse. He was afraid of losing you, so he pushed you away. Classic self-sabotage." "Vanessa said I was too soft for his world." "Vanessa is a fool who mistakes cruelty for strength." Marcus's voice hardened. "You were never too soft, Elena. You were too good. There's a difference. Adrien's world needs more people like you, not fewer." The coffee arrived, bitter and strong. Elena wrapped her hands around the cup, seeking its warmth. "What happens now, to Adrien, I mean, after giving Kozlov 50%? "He's rebuilding, consolidating what he has left, making new alliances. It's hurt him, no question, but he's adapting." Marcus paused. "And he's different now, quieter, more careful. Whatever happened in that warehouse, it changed something in him. He chose my life over his empire." "He did, and it cost him dearly, not just in power, but in respect. There are people in the organization who see it as weakness, who think he's lost his edge." Marcus met her eyes. "He's vulnerable right now in ways he's never been before. And in our world, vulnerability gets you killed." The word sent a chill through Elena. "Are you saying he's in danger?" "I'm saying the landscape has shifted. Kozlov has half of Adrien's territory, which makes him bold. Other competitors are circling, sensing blood in the water. And Adrien is distracted, grieving the loss of his marriage even though he knows it was necessary." "It was necessary." "I know, and so does he. But knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally are very different things." Marcus leaned back. "He asked me to give you something." He pulled an envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. Elena stared at it like it might explode. "I don't want anything from him. The settlement was more than generous." "It's not money. Just read it. Then do what you want with it." Elena picked up the envelope with trembling fingers. Her name was written on the front in Adrien's bold handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the letter short and to the point. Elena, by the time you read this, we'll be divorced. I won't fight it anymore. I won't try to change your mind or convince you I can be better. You deserve more than promises from a man who's proven he can't keep them. I'm writing to tell you 3 things I should have said in the hospital but couldn't find the words for. First, I'm sorry. Not for losing you, because I understand now that you were never mine to lose, but for wasting 3 years of your life. For taking your love and treating it like something cheap and disposable. You deserved better than I ever gave you. Second, the baby haunts me. I dream about a child I'll never meet, with your eyes and your kindness. I dream about being a father, about doing it right, about breaking the cycle of violence my own father started. That dream died on Riverside Drive, and it's the only thing I've lost that I truly grieve. Third, you were right about everything. I don't know how to love without controlling. I don't know how to be vulnerable without seeing it as weakness. I don't know how to be the kind of man worthy of a woman like you. But watching you walk away has taught me something important, that real love isn't about possession. It's about letting go. I'm letting you go, Elena, not because I don't love you, but because I do. And the only way I know how. I've arranged for the bodyguards to stay until Kozlov's agreement is ironclad. After that, you'll be truly free. Free of me, free of my world, free to build the life you should have had all along. Be happy. Be safe. Be the woman you were always meant to be. I won't contact you again. Adrien Elena read the letter twice, tears blurring the words on the second pass. It was the most honest Adrien had ever been with her, the most vulnerable, and it came too late to change anything. He means it, Marcus said quietly, about not contacting you. He's cut himself off completely, won't ask about you, won't check on you. He said the only way he can let you go is to do it completely. That's probably for the best. Is it? Marcus's expression was hard to read. Or is it just another way for him to punish himself? Elena folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. It doesn't matter. It's over either way. They finished their coffee in silence, then Marcus walked her to her car. The bodyguard who'd been trailing her nodded to Marcus, and Elena realized they'd been coordinating her protection without her even knowing. How much longer? She asked. 2 more weeks. Then Kozlov's agreement becomes binding, and you're out of danger. After that, the men will disappear, and you'll never see them again. And you? Will I see you again? Marcus smiled, sad and genuine. I hope not. If you're seeing me, it means you're still connected to this world. You need to leave it behind completely. What about you? Why do you stay? Because I'm not strong enough to leave. I'm too deep in, too complicit. This is my life, for better or worse. He opened her car door. But you have a chance to be free. Don't waste it. Elena drove back to her apartment, Marcus's words echoing in her mind. She had a chance to be free. The question was what to do with that freedom. That evening, she sat at her laptop and began searching for teaching positions. It had been 3 years since she'd taught elementary school, but her certification was still valid. Within an hour, she'd found 3 openings in Boston, close to Sarah, far from Adrien, in a city where she could start fresh. She was drafting her first application when her phone buzzed with a news alert. Power shift in criminal underground. Adrien Voss, rumored to be stepping down. Elena's hands froze on the keyboard. She clicked the link, her heart pounding, and read an article full of speculation and anonymous sources. Adrien Voss, once one of the most powerful crime bosses on the East Coast, was reportedly withdrawing from active leadership. Some sources claimed ill health. Others whispered about a crisis of conscience. The truth, the article concluded, remained murky. But Elena knew the truth. Adrien was dismantling his empire, not because he was forced to, but because he'd chosen to, just like he'd chosen her life over his power. She called Marcus, not caring that it was late. "What's he doing?" she demanded when he answered. "You saw the news. Is it true? Is he really stepping down?" "He's transitioning out, gradually, carefully, but yes, he's done." "Why?" Marcus sighed. "You'll have to ask him that yourself, though I thought you two weren't supposed to be in contact." "We're not. Elena stopped, unsure what she wanted to say. "Is he in danger? You said people would see him as weak." "He's handling it. making strategic alliances, ensuring loyal people control what he's leaving behind. He's not stupid, Elena. He knows how to exit without getting killed. But why is he exiting at all? Maybe he finally realized the cost was too high. Maybe losing you and the baby showed him there are more important things than power. Marcus paused. Or maybe he just got tired of being a monster. After hanging up, Elena sat in the dark, her apartment silent around her. Adrien was leaving his empire, walking away from everything he'd built, everything that defined him. Because of her? Because of their lost child? Because of some moral awakening she'd never thought him capable of? It shouldn't matter. They were divorced. Over. She was supposed to be moving on, applying for teaching jobs in Boston, building a life that had nothing to do with Adrien Voss. But she couldn't stop thinking about his letter, about the man who'd written those words. A man admitting he didn't know how to love right, but was trying to learn. A man who'd given up his empire to keep her safe and was now giving up the rest to become someone better. The rational part of her brain said it was too little, too late. The emotional part wondered if people could really change, if redemption was possible, even for men like Adrien. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat on her balcony watching the city lights, thinking about choices and consequences, about the weight of the past and the possibility of the future. 2 weeks passed. The bodyguards disappeared as promised, and Elena woke up one morning to find the street below her apartment empty of watchful men in parked cars. She was free. Truly, completely free. She'd been offered a teaching position in Boston starting in January, and she'd accepted. Sarah was already preparing the guest room, chattering excitedly about having her sister close again. Elena should have been excited too. Should have been packing, planning, looking forward to this new chapter. Instead, she found herself driving to the Voss mansion. She told herself she just needed closure, needed to see the place one more time, to say goodbye to the life she'd lived there. But as she pulled up the long driveway, past the manicured gardens and marble fountain, she knew she was lying to herself. She was here because she needed to see Adrien. The front door was answered by Marta, the housekeeper, whose face lit up with surprised delight. Mrs. Voss, Miss Hart, I didn't know you were coming. Is he home? Something complicated crossed Marta's expression. He's in his study, but Miss Hart, you should know. It's all right, Marta. I'll show myself up. Elena climbed the grand staircase she'd walked 1,000 times, each step feeling like a journey into the past. The house was quieter than she remembered, less full of the bustling activity that had always marked Adrien's empire. Several rooms stood empty, furniture covered in sheets. She found Adrien in his study, sitting at his desk with papers spread before him. He looked thinner than she remembered, older somehow, though only weeks had passed. His hair needed cutting, and he hadn't shaved in days. When he looked up and saw her standing in the doorway, his expression cycled through shock, hope, and careful neutrality in the space of seconds. Elena. Her name on his lips was a question and a prayer combined. What are you doing here? I read the news. About you stepping down. It's not news yet, won't be official for another month. He stood, then seemed unsure what to do with his hands. How did you get past security? There is no security. The front gate was open. Marta answered the door. Adrien's jaw tightened. I've been downsizing, letting people go. Why? Because I don't need an army to protect an empire I'm dismantling. Elena stepped into the study, looking at the papers on his desk. Legal documents, transfer agreements, dissolution papers for various shell corporations. You're really doing it, walking away from everything. I told you in the letter, I'm trying to be better, trying to be the kind of man who doesn't need an empire built on fear to feel powerful. And Vanessa? Gone. Ended it the night of the warehouse. She wasn't interested in a man without power. His smile was bitter. Turns out she loved what I was, not who I am. And who are you, Adrien? Without the empire, without the power. Who are you? He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the truth in his eyes. He didn't know. For 36 years, he'd been defined by violence and control, by the weight of his father's legacy and the empire he'd built. Strip all that away, and underneath was a man who'd never learned to exist without it. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I'm trying to find out. I've been talking to someone, a therapist. She's helping me work through things. Elena couldn't hide her surprise. Adrien Voss in therapy? Adrien Voss is dead. Or dying, anyway. I'm trying to figure out who Adrien is without the Voss legacy attached to it. He moved around the desk, stopping a careful distance from her. Why are you really here, Elena? I promised not to contact you, to let you go. I know, and I appreciate that. But I needed to see for myself if this was real. If you were really changing, or if this was just another manipulation. And what do you think? She studied him, the exhaustion in his eyes, the defeat in his posture, the genuine uncertainty about who he was becoming. This wasn't the confident, controlling man she'd married. This was someone learning to be vulnerable, to exist without armor. I think you're trying, she said finally. I think it's real. Does that change anything? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Did it change anything? Could it? They were divorced. She was moving to Boston. He was dismantling his life to build something new. The smart thing would be to say no, to wish him well and walk away, to let their story end the way it needed to. But Elena had learned something about herself in the past months. She wasn't always smart when it came to matters of the heart. I don't know, she admitted. Part of me wants to believe people can change, that you can become someone different, someone better. But another part remembers all the times you promised things would be different, and they never were. I never promised before. Not really. I said what you wanted to hear, but I never committed to actual change. This is different, Elena. I'm selling everything. The shipping company, the warehouses, all of it. I'm turning over evidence to the FBI about my competitors. Not my own operations, but enough to satisfy them that I'm cooperating. And I'm setting up a foundation. A foundation. For families affected by organized crime. Scholarships for kids who lost parents to violence. Support for women trying to leave dangerous situations. It's my attempt at restitution, I guess. Paying back some of the damage I've caused. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. This was more than she'd expected, more than she'd dared to hope for. That's good, Adrien. That's really good. It doesn't erase what I've done. Doesn't bring back the people who died because of my choices. But it's something. It's a start. What about Kozlov? Aren't you worried he'll come after you? I've made arrangements, given him everything I promised and more. He has no reason to target me anymore. I'm no longer competition, just a former player leaving the game. They stood in silence, the air between them charged with everything unsaid. Finally, Adrien spoke again, his voice rough with emotion. I dream about the baby sometimes, about what they would have looked like, whether they'd have your eyes or mine, whether they'd have been brave like you or broken like me. Don't say that. You're not broken. Yes, I am. I've been broken since I was a kid watching my father beat my mother, learning that love and violence were the same thing. I've been broken since the first time I hurt someone and felt powerful instead of ashamed. I've been broken for so long I forgot what whole felt like. He took a step closer. But you made me remember. For 3 years you showed me what it could be like to be loved without conditions, to be valued for something other than fear and power. I didn't appreciate it then. I was too afraid of it, too suspicious of anything that good. But I appreciate it now. Adrien, I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not even asking for a second chance. I know I destroyed that possibility. I just needed you to know that losing you and our child was the catalyst I needed to finally see clearly, to finally want to be better. Elena's tears spilled over. I came here angry, ready to confront you about dismantling your empire like it was some grand gesture meant to win me back. But this isn't about me, is it? No, it's about me, about becoming someone I can live with when I look in the mirror. Someone who might deserve happiness someday, even if it's not with you. Well, what if I said I wanted to try again? Not now, but someday. After you've had time to rebuild yourself, to become the person you're trying to be. What would you say? Adrien looked at her with such raw hope that it hurt to witness. I'd say you're too good for me even now, that you should move to Boston, start fresh, find someone who was never a monster in the first place, someone who doesn't have to learn basic human decency from a therapist. That's not what I asked. Then I'd say yes, that I'd wait however long it takes, that I'd do whatever work is necessary to become someone worthy of a second chance with you, even if it takes years, even if it never happens. He reached for her hand, then stopped himself, letting his arm fall back to his side. But I won't ask you to wait for me, Elena. That wouldn't be fair. You need to live your life, build your future, find your happiness. If our paths cross again someday, and you still feel something for me, then we can talk about possibilities, but I won't hold you hostage to hope. The maturity in his words, the selflessness, was so different from the man who tried to control every aspect of their marriage that Elena barely recognized him. This was the change she'd wanted to see, the growth she'd prayed for. And now that it was here, she didn't know what to do with it. I'm moving to Boston, she said. I start teaching in January. That's wonderful. You always loved teaching. And you're really going through with all of this? The foundation, the cooperation with the FBI, all of it? I am. It's not just talk anymore, Elena. It's action. It's commitment. I'm burning my old life to the ground so nothing is left to go back to. She nodded slowly, processing everything. Then I think we both need time. Time apart to figure out who we are as individuals before we can even think about who we might be together. I agree. But Adrien, I'm not saying never. I'm just saying not now. The hope in his eyes grew brighter. Not now. I can work with not now. Don't wait for me. If you meet someone else, someone who's good for you, there won't be anyone else, not for a long time. His voice was certain, final. I need to learn to be alone, to be comfortable with myself before I can be with anyone. My therapist calls it doing the work. I call it penance. It's not penance if it leads somewhere better. Then maybe it's redemption. Elena moved closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to smell his cologne mixed with coffee and exhaustion. I'm going to go now, but I want you to know something. I forgive you, Adrien, for the affair, for the neglect, for everything. Not because you've earned it yet, but because I don't want to carry that anger anymore. It's too heavy. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Probably not, but I'm giving it anyway. Consider it a gift. She reached up and touched his face, her palm against his rough cheek. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch like a man starved for human contact. Be good, she whispered. Become the man you want to be. And maybe someday, if we're both very lucky, we'll find our way back to each other. And if we don't, then we'll have lived good lives apart. And that will have to be enough. She dropped her hand and walked out of the study, down the grand staircase, through the front door. She didn't look back, didn't let herself check if he was watching from the window. This goodbye had to be clean, had to be final, or she'd never have the strength to leave. But as she drove down the long driveway for what might be the last time, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not for reconciliation necessarily, but for the future. For the possibility that people could change, that love could transform, that endings could sometimes be beginnings in disguise. Her phone buzzed as she reached the main road. A text from Adrien. Thank you for believing I could be better. I won't let you down. She didn't respond. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said. Instead, she turned toward her apartment, toward packing boxes and job offers, and a new life waiting in Boston. Behind her, Adrien Voss stood at his study window, watching her taillights disappear into the distance. And for the first time in his adult life, he let himself cry. Not for what he'd lost, but for what he might someday have the chance to earn back. 6 months passed like pages turning in a book Elena had written herself. She moved to Boston in early January, settling into a modest apartment 3 blocks from Sarah's house and 15 minutes from Riverside Elementary School, where 23 second graders called her Miss Hart and looked at her like she held the secrets to the universe. Teaching again felt like breathing after being underwater for 3 years. She'd forgotten how much joy there was in watching a child's face light up when something finally made sense, how satisfying it was to build something that mattered. Her life became beautifully ordinary. She graded papers at her kitchen table, attended her nephew's soccer games, joined a book club with other teachers. She grocery shopped on Saturdays and went to yoga on Tuesday evenings. She dated a kind accountant named David for 6 weeks before they both agreed there was no spark. She hadn't thought about Adrien in days. Sometimes a whole week would pass without his face crossing her mind. That was a lie, of course. She thought about him constantly. But the thoughts had changed from bitter to curious, from angry to something softer she couldn't quite name. She wondered if he'd followed through, if he was really becoming someone different. She wondered if his foundation was real or just another manipulation. She wondered if he thought about her too, or if letting go meant forgetting entirely. She'd kept his letter, the one Marcus had given her. Sometimes late at night when sleep wouldn't come, she'd pull it from the drawer where she kept important documents and read it again, searching for clues about whether redemption was really possible or just a fantasy she wanted to believe in. Marcus called once, in February, to tell her that Adrien had transferred the final assets to Kozlov and that the FBI had accepted his cooperation. The investigation into his former competitors was ongoing, but Adrien himself was clear. He'd paid his debts, both legal and criminal, and was officially out of the life. "How is he?" Elena had asked, hating herself for caring. "Different," Marcus said. "Quieter. He's working on the foundation full-time now. It's actually helping people, Elena. Real families getting real support. Whatever demons he's fighting, he's putting the battle to good use." She'd wanted to ask more but held back. She'd told Adrien not to wait for her, and she needed to honor that by not checking up on him like a worried mother. He was doing his work. She was doing hers. That had to be enough. Spring came to Boston in bursts of cherry blossoms and warming air. Elena's classroom had windows that overlooked a park, and she'd watch her students play during recess, their laughter carrying on the breeze. One afternoon in late April, she was organizing supplies when the school secretary knocked on her classroom door. "Miss Hart, there's a man here to see you. Says it's important." Elena's heart jumped immediately to the worst conclusion. Something had happened to Sarah, or her parents, or Adrien. She rushed to the front office and found Marcus Chen standing by the reception desk, looking uncomfortable in the institutional fluorescence. "Marcus? What's wrong? Is Adrien—" "He's fine. Everyone's fine." Marcus glanced at the curious secretary. "Could we talk outside?" They walked to the parking lot, Elena's mind racing through possibilities. Marcus looked older than she remembered, the lines around his eyes deeper, his hair graying at the temples. "I'm leaving the organization," he said without preamble. "What's left of it anyway? I've put in my notice with the new leadership, sold my stake in the remaining operations. I'm done." "That's wonderful, Marcus, but why come all the way to Boston to tell me?" "Because I wanted you to know that Adrien's influence is spreading, not in power, but in change. He's not the only one stepping away. 3 other lieutenants have left in the past 2 months. His foundation is employing former criminals, giving them legitimate paths out. He's dismantling the life from the inside out, and it's working." Elena leaned against her car, processing this. "You came here to tell me Adrien's succeeding. I came here to tell you that change is real, that people can break patterns they've lived in for decades. I'm 52 years old, Elena. I've been in this life since I was 19. And if I can walk away, if I can imagine a different future, then maybe anything is possible." "What will you do now?" "I'm opening a security firm. Legitimate work, background checks, and protective details for people who actually deserve protection. Adrien's investing in it, along with 2 other former associates. We're building something clean." Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket. "He asked me to give you this if I ever saw you. Said I'd know when the timing was right." Elena took the envelope with shaking hands. "How long have you been carrying this?" 3 months. I wanted to wait until I was certain his changes were permanent, not just performance. They're real, Elena. Whatever he's doing, whoever he's becoming, it's real." After Marcus left, Elena sat in her car staring at the envelope. Her name was written in Adrien's handwriting, and the paper was slightly worn, as if it had been handled many times before Marcus sealed it. She should wait until she got home to read it, should have privacy for whatever was inside. She opened it right there in the school parking lot. "Elena, I don't know when you'll read this, or if you'll read it at all. Marcus said he'd hold it until he thought the time was right. I trust his judgment more than my own these days. It's been 6 months since you walked out of my study. 6 months since I started trying to become someone better. I wanted to write and tell you about the progress I've made, the foundation's success, the lives we've helped. But that would be seeking your approval, and I promised myself I'd do this work for me, not for you. Still, I think you'd be proud. The foundation has provided scholarships to 47 children. We've helped 19 women escape dangerous situations. We've employed 32 former criminals in legitimate jobs. It's not enough to balance the scales of what I've done, but it's something. My therapist says I'm making real progress. I've learned to sit with guilt instead of drowning it in work or violence. I've learned that vulnerability isn't weakness. I've learned that the power I craved for so many years was just a substitute for the connection I was too afraid to build. I think about you every day, not in the obsessive way I used to, where you were a possession I needed to control, but in quiet moments of gratitude. Grateful that you existed in my life. Grateful that you showed me what real love looked like. Grateful that you were strong enough to leave when I wasn't strong enough to be better. I'm not writing to ask for a second chance. I made peace with the fact that some things, once broken, can't be repaired. But I wanted you to know that you changed my life, Elena. Losing you saved me. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you're happy. You deserve every good thing this world has to offer. If we never see each other again, please know that I became someone better because you believed I could. That's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. With love and respect, Adrien. Elena read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face in the privacy of her car. This wasn't the Adrien she'd married or even the one she'd divorced. This was someone who'd done the work, who changed not for external validation but for internal peace. This was growth, real and hard-earned. She pulled out her phone and stared at it for a long time before typing a message to a number she'd never deleted. I got your letter. I'm proud of you. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came 30 minutes later. Thank you. That means everything. Neither of them wrote anything else. The silence that followed felt different from the ones before. Not empty, but full of possibility. Summer brought long days and the end of the school year. Elena's students gave her handmade cards and tight hugs, promising to visit her classroom next year. She spent July with Sarah's family at a lake house, teaching her niece to swim and her nephew to skip stones. She felt lighter than she had in years, unburdened by the weight of a failing marriage or the grief of what she'd lost. But in quiet moments, she still thought about Adrien. In August, the Boston Globe ran a feature on successful charitable organizations, and the Voss Foundation was prominently featured. Elena read the article over coffee, studying the photo of Adrien at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new community center. He looked different, not just older, but settled. At peace with himself in a way he'd never been before. The article quoted him, "I spent most of my life taking from people. This foundation is my attempt to give back. Not to erase the past, but to create a better future for people caught in cycles of violence and poverty. Everyone deserves a second chance. I'm grateful to have mine." Sarah noticed Elena reading the article for the 3rd time. Still thinking about him? I don't know. Maybe. Is that crazy? It's human. You loved him once. That doesn't just disappear because the marriage ended. Sarah sat down across from her. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. We both need to keep growing separately. For how long? Elena didn't have an answer. She'd told herself she needed time, needed space, needed to rebuild herself before she could even think about Adrien again. But how much time was enough? How did you know when you were ready? The answer came in September, on the anniversary of the accident. Elena had known the date was approaching, had felt it looming like a storm on the horizon. She took the day off work and drove to a quiet spot by the Charles River, where she could sit and think and remember the baby who'd never been born. She'd brought flowers, white roses for innocence, and sat on a bench watching the water ripple in the autumn breeze. She was crying softly when a voice spoke behind her. I hoped I might find you here. Elena turned to find Adrien standing on the path, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, his hands in his pockets. He looked nervous, uncertain, so different from the commanding presence he'd once projected. How did you know where I'd be? I didn't. I've been to 3 different places today, looking for you. I remembered you loved water when you were sad. Thought I'd try the river. He gestured to the bench. May I? She nodded, moving over to make room. He sat down carefully, maintaining space between them, and for a while they just watched the water together. 1 year, he said finally. Since the accident, since we lost our baby. I didn't think you'd remember the date. I remember everything about that night, every call I ignored, every choice I made. I carry it with me every day. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a silver pendant in the shape of a tiny heart. I had this made for the baby we lost. I didn't know if you'd want it, but I thought I should offer. Elena took the pendant with trembling hands. It was delicate, beautiful, inscribed on the back with a date, the day of the accident. It's perfect. Thank you. I come to Boston every year on this date to remember, to grieve what might have been. I never contacted you because I promised I wouldn't, but I've been here, sitting by this river thinking about the family we could have had. You come to Boston every year? It's only been 1 year, he said with a small smile. But yes, I plan to make it a tradition, a way to honor what we lost, even if we're not together. Elena clasped the pendant around her neck, feeling its weight settle above her heart. Marcus visited me in April, told me about your work, about the changes spreading through the organization. Marcus has been a good friend to both of us. He said people are following your example, leaving the life, starting over. Some are. Others think I'm weak, that I've betrayed everything my father built. There's been pushback, threats, but I'm insulated now, protected by my cooperation with the authorities and my public profile. Attacking me would draw too much attention. They fell silent again, the weight of unspoken questions hanging between them. Finally, Elena asked what she'd been wondering for months. Are you happy, Adrien? He considered the question carefully. I'm at peace, which is different from happy, but maybe more important. I don't wake up hating myself anymore. I don't carry the constant weight of violence and guilt. I'm building something good instead of destroying things. So yes, in a way, I'm happy. Or learning to be. I'm proud of you, for the work you're doing, for becoming someone different. And you? Are you happy? Elena thought about her small apartment, her classroom full of bright-eyed children, her ordinary life in Boston. I am. I really am. For the first time in years, I feel like myself, like the person I was always meant to be. You were always that person. You just got lost for a while in my shadow. We both got lost. Adrien turned to face her, his dark eyes intense with emotion. I know I promised not to ask for a second chance. I know we agreed to grow separately. But seeing you here, today, on this anniversary, I have to know. Is there any possibility for us? Not now, maybe not for years, but someday? Elena's heart raced. She'd asked herself this question 100 times, had played out scenarios in her mind during sleepless nights. But hearing him ask it directly forced her to confront the truth she'd been avoiding. I don't know, she said honestly. The man you were? No, there's no possibility there. He hurt me too deeply. And the man I'm becoming? Him I could maybe love, but I need to be sure the change is permanent. That you're not going to wake up one day and decide the old life was easier, that control was more comfortable than vulnerability. That won't happen. You can't promise that. Change is hard, Adrien. Staying changed is harder. The real test isn't the first year. It's year 5, year 10, when the novelty of transformation wears off and you're left with the daily work of being better. He nodded slowly, accepting her words. Then what do? We keep growing, separately, but aware of each other. We stay in touch, maybe. Check in occasionally. Let time prove what promises can't. And if in 5 years, or 10, we're both still on good paths, still becoming better versions of ourselves, then we revisit this conversation. We see if there's still something between us worth exploring. Elena reached for his hand, the first time she'd voluntarily touched him since their divorce. But Adrien, I need you to understand something. I'm not waiting for you. I'm living my life. If I meet someone else, someone who's good and kind and right for me, I'm not going to pass that up because of a maybe. I understand. And I wouldn't want you to. You deserve love, Elena. Real, healthy love. If you find that with someone else, I'll be happy for you. Will you really? It'll hurt, but I'll be happy underneath the hurt because you'll be happy. That's what love is, right? Wanting the best for someone even when it costs you. Elena squeezed his hand. Look at you, getting wise in your old age. My therapist deserves all the credit. I'm just the student finally doing the homework. He stood, pulling her up with him. Walk with me? They strolled along the river path, their hands still loosely connected, talking about everything and nothing. Adrien told her about the Foundation's newest project, a mentorship program pairing at-risk youth with former criminals who'd turned their lives around. Elena told him about her students, about the joy of teaching, about her niece and nephew who kept her grounded. It felt comfortable in a way their marriage never had. Easy. Like they were finally meeting as equals rather than as captor and captive, controller and controlled. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they found themselves back at Elena's car. "Thank you for today," she said, "for remembering, for the pendant, for everything. Thank you for giving me a chance to explain myself, for not hating me. I could never hate you, Adrien. Even at my angriest, I just felt sad. Sad for what we could have been if we'd both been healthier people when we met. Maybe we're becoming those healthier people now. Maybe we are." He leaned down and kissed her forehead, the touch gentle and respectful. "Take care of yourself, Elena Hart. The world is better with you in it." "You too, Adrien. Keep doing the work. Keep being better." She watched him walk away, his figure growing smaller in the fading light. And for the first time since the divorce, she felt genuine hope. Not for reconciliation necessarily, but for both of them. They were broken people learning to heal, and whether they healed together or apart, they were healing. That was what mattered. The months that followed brought steady changes. Elena and Adrien texted occasionally, brief messages about their work or shared memories. Nothing deep, nothing that crossed the boundaries they'd established, but enough to maintain connection. She learned about the Foundation's expansion into 3 new cities. He learned about her promotion to lead teacher at her school. In December, Marcus sent her an invitation to his security firm's grand opening. She flew down for the weekend, staying with Sarah, who'd driven down separately, and found a celebration full of people she recognized from Adrien's old organization. They'd all left the life, all found legitimate work, all seemed lighter somehow. Adrien was there, of course, talking easily with former associates who now called him friend rather than boss. He saw Elena across the room and smiled, genuine and warm, but didn't immediately approach, letting her set the terms of their interaction, respecting her boundaries even in a crowded room. When they finally spoke, it was easy and natural. He introduced her to his therapist, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who shook Elena's hand firmly and said, "So you're the catalyst. I've heard a lot about you." "All good, I hope," Elena replied. "All honest," the therapist corrected, "which is more important than good." Later, Adrien walked Elena to her car. "You look happy," he observed. "Really, genuinely happy." "I am. Boston suits me. Teaching suits me. This life suits me." "Good. That's all I ever wanted for you." "Liar. You wanted me under your control." "The old me did. The current me just wants you to thrive." He opened her car door. "Same time next year, anniversary of the accident?" Elena considered this. Meeting once a year to remember what they'd lost felt right. Maintaining connection without pressure felt healthy. "Yes, same place by the river." "It's a date. Or not a date. A remembrance." "A remembrance," she agreed. "That's perfect." She drove back to Boston with Sarah, who'd been watching the interaction with shrewd eyes. "You're falling for him again," Sarah said. "Or still. I can't tell which. I'm not falling. I'm observing. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, you look at him the way you used to, before everything went wrong." "Maybe, but I'm smarter now, more careful. I won't lose myself in him again." "What if he's genuinely changed? What if he's really become someone worthy of you?" "Then we'll have time to figure that out. Years, probably. And if we're both still on good paths when enough time has passed, maybe we'll try again. And if you meet someone else in the meantime?" Elena thought about David, the kind accountant she'd dated briefly, about the other men she'd been set up with, all perfectly nice, all fundamentally wrong. She could keep dating, keep searching for someone who fit into her new life without complications. Or she could be honest with herself. "I don't think I will," she admitted. "Meet someone else, I mean. Because the truth is, Sarah, part of me is still in love with Adrien. Not the man he was, but the man he's becoming. And I can't invest in someone new while still carrying feelings for him." "So you are waiting for him?" "Not waiting, just not actively pursuing alternatives. There's a difference." Sarah shook her head but smiled. "You two are going to end up together again. I can feel it." "Maybe. Or maybe we're just two people who needed to break each other to become whole. Maybe the love story isn't the reconciliation. Maybe it's the transformation." But as winter turned to spring and spring to summer, Elena found herself thinking more and more about Adrien, about his texts that came every few weeks, about the Foundation's continued success, about the man he was becoming. She attended the Foundation's second annual gala in June, watching Adrien give a speech about redemption and second chances that brought several people to tears. Afterward, they stood on the balcony of the hotel ballroom, looking out at the city lights. 2 years, Adrien said, since the accident, since everything changed. Are you counting? Every day. Not obsessively, but mindfully, reminding myself how far I've come, how much further I want to go. Elena studied his profile in the moonlight. He'd aged well, the lines on his face giving him character rather than diminishing him. Do you ever miss it? The power, the control? Sometimes. Usually when things get hard or when I feel powerless, but then I remember what that power cost me. You, our child, my humanity, and I know I'd rather struggle with being good than succeed at being terrible. That's very wise. I have a good therapist, and a good reason to keep improving. He turned to face her. Elena, I need to tell you something. I've been offered a position in Boston, director of operations for a nonprofit that works with at-risk youth. It's perfect for my experience, and they specifically want someone with my background who's successfully transitioned out. Her heart jumped. You'd be moving to Boston? Only if you're comfortable with it. I know we agreed to maintain distance, to grow separately. If having me in the same city would be too much, I'll turn it down. There are other opportunities. You'd give up a perfect job because I might be uncomfortable? In a heartbeat. Your peace of mind matters more than my career. Elena was quiet for a long moment, weighing what this meant. Having Adrien in the same city would change the dynamic of their relationship. They'd run into each other, would be tempted to see each other more often. The careful distance they'd maintained would collapse. But maybe that was okay. Maybe they'd done enough growing separately. Maybe it was time to see if they could exist in the same space without destroying each other. Take the job, she said finally. Boston is big enough for both of us, and I think we're both strong enough now to handle being in the same city. Are you sure? No, but I think we should try anyway. Adrien moved to Boston in August, taking an apartment on the opposite side of the city from Elena. They saw each other occasionally, coffee every few weeks, the annual Remembrance by the River, foundation events where Elena had started volunteering. Each interaction was careful, boundaried, but warm. They were learning to be friends, to exist in each other's orbit without the gravity of their past pulling them into old patterns. 3 years after the divorce, Elena stood in Adrien's new office, watching him interact with a group of teenagers from the youth program. He was patient and kind, listening to their stories without judgment, offering guidance without condescension. This was who he'd become, a man who used his painful past to help others avoid his mistakes. When the session ended and the teens filed out, Adrien found Elena waiting. What did you think? He asked. I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're meant to do. High praise from you means everything. She walked closer, studying his face. I've been thinking. About? About us. About how much time has passed, how much we've both changed, about whether we're ready to try again. Adrien's expression shifted from professional to vulnerable in an instant. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying maybe it's time, not to rush back into marriage or commitment, but to date. To explore whether there's still something between us worth building on. Elena, His voice caught. I never thought you'd actually give me another chance. I'm not giving you anything. We're giving each other a chance, both of us, together, to see if we can build something healthy this time. I want that, more than anything. Then let's start slow. Dinner next week. Actual dates where we get to know each other again, as the people we are now rather than who we were. I can do slow. I've waited 3 years. I can wait longer if that's what you need. Elena reached for his hand, marveling at how different it felt now. No possession, no control, just connection. I don't want to wait anymore. I just want to be careful, intentional. Make sure we're building something real this time. We will be. I promise you, Elena. I'm not the same man who hurt you. I'll spend the rest of my life proving that if I have to. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant where nobody knew Adrien as a former crime boss or Elena as his ex-wife. They were just two people sharing pasta and wine, telling stories and laughing like they'd never done during their marriage. The second date was a walk through a botanical garden, surrounded by flowers and possibility. The third was a cooking class where Adrien proved himself surprisingly incompetent with a chef's knife, making Elena laugh until tears streamed down her face. Slowly, carefully, they built something new. Not a resurrection of their marriage, but something better. Something rooted in equality and honesty and hard-won growth. On the 4th anniversary of the accident, they sat together by the river, holding hands and remembering the baby they'd lost. "Do you think they'd be proud of us?" Elena asked softly. "If they'd lived? If they could see who we've become?" "I think they'd be proud of you. You've always been the good one, the strong one. I'm just trying to catch up." "You're not giving yourself enough credit. You've transformed your entire life, Adrien. That takes incredible strength. But it took losing everything to find the strength. Some people learn the easy way. I had to learn the hard way." "We both did." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in familiar colors. 4 years ago, Elena had been trapped in a car, bleeding and calling for a husband who wouldn't answer. Now she sat beside that same man, transformed, holding his hand and feeling genuinely peaceful. "I love you," Adrien said quietly. "Not the way I did before, possessive and controlling, but real love. The kind that wants you to be happy even if it's not with me. The kind that respects your autonomy and celebrates your strength. The kind that took me 39 years to learn." "I love you too," Elena replied. "The you you've become. The man who did the work, who faced his demons, who chose to be better. I couldn't love the old you anymore. But this you? Him I can love completely." 6 months later, on a crisp October evening, Adrien knocked on Elena's apartment door holding a small velvet box. "It's too soon for that," Elena said when she saw it, though her heart raced with hope. "It's not what you think. Open it." Inside was a simple silver ring, delicate and understated. "It's a promise ring," Adrien explained. "Not an engagement, not yet. But a promise that when we're both ready, when we're both certain, I'll ask you properly. And if you say yes, we'll do it right this time. Build a marriage on truth instead of lies, on partnership instead of control." Elena slipped the ring onto her right hand. "When do you think we'll be ready?" "I don't know. A year? 2? However long it takes to be absolutely certain we won't repeat the mistakes of the past. What if we're never certain? What if there's always doubt? Then we stay engaged forever. I'm okay with that. I have you in my life, and that's what matters." But certainty came sooner than either expected. A year later, on the 5th anniversary of the accident, Adrien proposed properly by the Charles River where they'd reconnected. Elena said yes without hesitation, knowing in her bones that this time would be different. They married in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. Marcus served as Adrien's best man, Sarah as Elena's maid of honor. The foundation's success stories were their wedding favors, cards detailing the families they'd helped, the lives they'd changed, the good they'd built from the ashes of Adrien's old empire. During their vows, Adrien promised to answer every call, to prioritize their marriage over everything else, to be the partner Elena deserved. Elena promised to communicate her needs, to trust carefully but fully, to believe in the man he'd become. They honeymooned in a small coastal town, far from the city and the life that had nearly destroyed them. One evening, walking on the beach, Elena told Adrien the news she'd been holding inside for 3 days. "I'm pregnant." He stopped walking, his face cycling through shock, fear, and overwhelming joy. "Are you sure?" "I took 3 tests, just like before, all positive." Adrien pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully like she might break. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "After what happened last time? I know. I'm scared too. But we're different people now, stronger, together, and we'll protect this baby with everything we have. I won't fail you this time. Or them. I swear it." And he didn't. Their daughter was born on a sunny morning in May, healthy and perfect, with Elena's green eyes and Adrien's dark hair. They named her Hope, for the possibility of second chances, for the redemption that had saved them both. Adrien held his daughter in the hospital room, tears streaming down his face as he made promises to her that Elena knew he'd keep. To be present. To be good. To show her that people could change, that mistakes didn't define you, that love was stronger than fear. Elena watched her husband, her real husband this time, not the stranger she'd married before, and felt complete. The road had been brutal, the losses devastating, but they'd survived. More than survived. They'd transformed. "Do you ever think about how we got here?" Adrien asked softly, his eyes on their sleeping daughter. "About everything we went through to reach this moment?" "All the time. Sometimes I'm grateful for it, strange as that sounds. If things hadn't fallen apart so completely, we never would have rebuilt ourselves into people capable of this. The accident, the divorce, all of it. All of it. The worst night of my life led to the best years." Adrien looked up at her, his expression serious. "I need you to know something. If I could go back and change one thing, it wouldn't be the affair or the neglect or even my old life. It would be answering your calls that night, saving you and our first baby. That's the regret I'll carry forever." "I know. But Adrien, if you'd answered, we might have saved the baby and lost ourselves. We might have stayed in that toxic marriage, getting sicker and more broken until there was nothing left to save. Maybe it had to happen exactly how it did. That's a cruel kind of fate. Or a merciful one. We got a second chance. Not everyone does." Elena settled into the hospital bed beside Adrien, their daughter cradled between them. Outside the window, the city hummed with life, full of people making choices and living with consequences. Some would get second chances like they had. Others wouldn't. The unfairness of it was staggering. But Elena had learned something through all the pain and growth. You couldn't control fate, couldn't guarantee outcomes, couldn't protect yourself from loss. All you could do was show up honestly, do the work, and trust that love, real, healthy, hard-won love, was worth the risk. "Thank you," Adrien whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "For not giving up on me, for believing I could be better, for giving me this second chance. Thank you for becoming someone worthy of it." Hope stirred in her sleep, making small sounds that filled the room with possibility. Their daughter, their future, their proof that transformation was real, that people could change, that endings could become beginnings if you were brave enough to burn everything down and build it back better. Years later, when Hope was old enough to ask questions, they would tell her the truth. About the empire built on violence, about the accident that changed everything, about the hard work of becoming better people. They would tell her that love sometimes meant walking away, and that real strength was choosing to grow even when growth was painful. But for now, in this quiet hospital room, they simply existed together. A family built not from perfection, but from redemption. A love story that had died and been reborn into something stronger. Adrien pressed a kiss to Elena's temple, then to Hope's tiny forehead. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you both know you're the most important things in my world. No empires, no power, no distractions. Just this. Just us." "I know," Elena said. "I believe you." And she did. Because belief, she'd learned, wasn't about blind faith. It was about witnessing someone's actions over time and trusting the evidence of their transformation. Adrien had proved himself day by day, choice by choice, year by year. He'd earned her trust back through consistency and honesty and work. That was the real love story. Not the fairy tale beginning, but the brutal middle and the hard-won ending. Not the passion that burned hot and destructive, but the steady warmth that sustained through all seasons. Not the control and possession, but the mutual respect and partnership. They'd learned it the hardest way possible, but they'd learned it. And that lesson, painful as it was, had saved them both. Outside the hospital window, the sun set on another day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new opportunities for growth. But tonight, wrapped in each other and their daughter, Elena and Adrien rested in the peace of transformation. They had walked through fire and emerged not unscathed, but stronger. They had lost everything and found themselves. They had learned that real love wasn't about never falling. It was about choosing to rise, together, every single time. And that was the ending they'd both earned. Not perfect, but real. Not without scars, but healed. Not the ending they'd expected, but the one they deserved.